Alright guys, welcome back to Schmattz Outdoors. Today we're going to keep going on my lessons learned here. This will be part 2 of the lessons learned. Part 1 of the lessons learned video was more just kind of my general thoughts on the season, kind of actually answering some questions that people have had. Ended up being a little more than I thought, but I feel like there's a lot of good information in there for you guys. This lessons learned video is going to be specifically on each individual animal species. So we're going to go, I have a list of the species, I kind of have a list of lessons for each one. Some of them I don't have a whole lot on this year. So yeah, there's going to be kind of species specific. The first one's going to be was just kind of general thoughts on how the season went, you know, answering some general things. All right, first species here is going to be the muskrats. I didn't get to trap a whole lot of muskrats, and there's some lessons to be learned in that, and I hope you guys hopefully it was evident in the videos. I sort of feel like it was, but I also lived it, so you know, it's hard to differentiate what I experienced and what I actually portrayed on video for you guys. Kind of the number one lesson here: if you know it's going to freeze over, don't put out 111 muskrat sets on the first day of season if you know it's going to freeze overnight and ice everything in. I should have known better. If it would have been a week later, if I had my line out for a whole week, you know, or even a few days, you know, and it was only getting to like 40 for lows, if I would have seen that the weather forecast was what it was for that night, I would have been pulling my sets the day before. I had high hopes that the weather would be better than what they were forecasting, and actually it ended up being worse than what they were forecasting. So I put out 111 muskrat sets the first day of water trapping season here in Minnesota in my area. It was only supposed to get to 25 degrees for a low, but the Sioux already had some ice on them before that. And then it had warmed up just a little bit, so that, you know, they all kind of melted off or opened up all the way to the shore again. So that tells me that the water temperature was right on the edge of being at freezing. Even the 25 degree number, if that, you know, that's what they were forecasting was supposed to get to that night, I should have known better than to put out that many sets, you know, go that hard at it. I had high hopes that I could make it through that night, because like the next couple nights after that, it wasn't supposed to be quite as cold, like only get to like freezing to 32. Excuse me, only get to like 32. So if I could have got through that first night with the sets working, they would have stayed working for a few nights. And if you guys watch my early videos, you can see that actually happen. I ended up pulling like 85 out of those 110 sets the next day because they were frozen, but the 35-ish, whatever I left out, or 30-ish, whatever the number was, I ended up making a bunch of catches in those sets, because the water stayed open that night. They made some catches that night, and then, you know, they continued to make catches for me for a few nights after that, until I finally did end up pulling the whole line a few days later. But I should have known better than to do it. Kind of the kicker to that whole thing is when I pulled the whole line the first time, you know, when I ended up going mule deer hunting, the Sioux had all opened back up. And that entire week I was gone, it never got below freezing here. So the Sioux were open for 10 days or more. Well, you know, kind of right before I left, the whole week I was gone. When I re-put out the line, I purposely put out the landline first, which is how I run my line, because I feel like, again, they have to soak a little bit before they really start working good. And then, like, I tried to kind of fill in a water line, and as you guys see, I did make, again, some muskrat catches. So there was almost probably close to a 2-week stretch in the middle of when I was trapping that the water was open, but I lost a week of that or more because of that mule deer hunting trip. Probably close to 10 days of water trapping I missed out on. So I ended up catching 82 muskrats. If I would have run through and not had, not went mule deer hunting, I feel like I could have probably got close to my season best, all-time season best of 300 in a season, because there was numbers of muskrats around. Again, I'd had like 2 weeks plus to put out sets, and maintain them, make catches, that type of stuff. So the lesson there is, man, I knew better to put them out in that kind of weather. So yeah, I guess that's the lesson. I knew better to do it. I did it because I thought, well, we're hoping, you know, setting traps on hope that things, you know, that the weather is going to be what you want it to be is not a good plan, because Mother Nature will do completely different than, you know, it will double down on how bad it was going to get, and that happened on me. Oh, so I didn't kind of finish that very well. It was only supposed to get to 25. When I got up the next morning, it was 16 degrees according to my house thermometer here. So it got almost 10 degrees colder than what they had forecasted, because it actually had cleared off that night and the wind almost completely died overnight. And it was supposed to stay up like 10 to 15 mile an hour winds overnight, which will keep it a little warmer. And then also the wind will help keep the Sioux from freezing over, but it didn't. It got flat calm and it got to like 16 degrees. And that's why I ended up with so much ice. I should have known better to put them out. Yeah, the weather did get worse than what they were forecasting, but yeah, so that's kind of the lesson there. The next thing is when I'm using baited foothold, so I have a foothold on a hags bracket, usually 1.5 to 2 inches below the water is how I set them. And then I have a bait clip above the water. Trap, water level, bait clip. Over the years, I feel like I had a lot of, when I first started using that type of set, I had a lot of bait stolen. Like they would be chewing on my carrots, and I used to use apples. Now I use sugar beets, you know, a chunk of sugar beet and a baby carrot is what I use. They'd be chewed on and that type of stuff. I was making plenty of catches, but my bait kept getting chewed on or stole. So I kept like moving them up. And over the years, I went from trap being maybe 10 inches above the water for my bait, if not maybe a little less, 10 inches above the trap, so 8 inches above water, to, I mean, I was like getting close to like 18 inches or so. And I feel like that had a negative impact. Over the years, I've just slowly gotten higher and higher, just trying to reduce the amount of bait I have stole. I think I've went too far. So this season, it seemed like, you know, if the bait's this high above the water, even a foot above the water, the muskrat might not even smell it, see it. I use lure on those sets. So I use like pepperminty smelling lures. I use Cavan's bread and butter. It's kind of a liquid lure and a little dropper, and I just drip that on top of the sugar beet. So I like having it up a little bit because the wind will catch it and kind of blow your scent around. But I think I had gotten too far and gotten them too high. So I actually had lowered them back down to getting them back, so maybe I'm 8 to 10 inches above the water, which I feel like probably where they probably should be used at. Maybe a foot from your trap at the most. I did have one spot, I actually had a couple spots where I lost my bait like several days in a row, and for some reason it didn't click in my head. They're like, hey, move your bait up a little bit, you know, get it higher up. And hopefully I think they were standing, it was when I was running the line the second time and I had just my poles set out as far as I could reach. I kind of think the muskrats were almost standing on the ground and reaching up and stealing my bait without having to get up on the trap. So it's like, duh, move your bait up if they keep stealing your bait. Sometimes I think in my head, like, oh, you know, I think I might even mention it in one of those videos that I thought maybe it could have been an otter, it could have been a raccoon, could have been different animals coming along and stealing my carrot, my sugar beet off of there. That very well could have been the case as well. But if I don't have any bait on there, I'm not making catches. So again, I feel like I want to be 8 inches above the water, 10 inches above my trap is where I think my bait clip should be. And I think, you know, if you start having issues, obviously you maybe need to move it up or down a little bit accordingly. I don't know that I would go any lower than that. I want to make sure they're trying to climb up on the trap to get up there to get to it. But having it too high, you know, the animals are swimming around. They have visibility up, obviously, because they're looking for birds of prey and other things. But I feel like you try to get it down more in their face. kind of going along with that is putting double sets at every location. So I started this maybe 3 years ago. So it'll be 3 seasons now I've sort of done that. 2 for sure. I've 100% of the time I'm putting 2 muskrat sets at every location. I'm doing a baited foothold. So I have my foothold, a couple inches below the water, and I have a sugar beet and a carrot with some lure on there. Usually, I'm only 4 feet apart to maybe 10 at the most. I have a 110 with a carrot on the trigger, and that carrot is right at water level. So like we were just talking, having my bait too high on my pole, I want to get my bait on my pole sets or the foothold sets a little lower so they can see it, be interested in trying to get to it. The carrot on a 110 trigger, so 110, carrot in the middle, water level right at the bottom of my carrot is how I set my trap. So the animal is going to be kind of centered up and down in your trap, halfway up and down. That bait is right in their face. I feel like it is, I don't know if it's doubled necessarily, but it has. It's doubled my catch rate, because there are spots where all of a sudden you're making a catch every day using a baited foothold. And I kind of use baited 110s sparingly in the past. So I've actually bought more over the years here. So I have about the same amount of each one. Have more than I need, more than I probably could ever get set. But if you keep catching one on the same set over and over again, you don't put a second set there. How many are coming by there that your set's already either knocked off, set off with a catch in it, and the next one comes by, he may be interested, but he can't get to it because there's nothing there. I want a second set there, so if 2 muskrats come by, I want to catch 2 muskrats every time. There's places a guy probably should be adding more, and I actually did that a couple times this year. I actually put 3 sets. I added an extra set next to the 2 I already had, because I was making like doubles a couple days in a row. I added a 3rd set there. If I'm catching 2 at a time, I'd rather catch 3 at a time. So that's kind of my thought logic. They're kind of 2 completely different type of sets. The only thing is I tend to have a few more misses on 110s. I can't always tell whether it's, the waves will set it off, your trigger starts, the carrot will bounce in the waves and eventually it'll set itself off. Whether I'm actually getting misses with those, if I'm not making good catches, once in a while I'm literally catching them by the last 1/4 inch of their nose, and then it'll drown them like that. You'll hold on to them enough to get them drowned. So I kind of wonder sometimes if you ain't getting catches like that. I try to get my triggers on the 110 set as sensitive as I possibly can. So, if they move that much, I want that trap going off. So if the muskrat comes up and is just chewing on your carrot, I want just that action to be enough to set that trap off. But yeah, I feel like that's definitely improved my catch rate significantly. I'm already there to check 1 trap, so why not 2? It literally takes me 15 extra seconds to put the second set in on the first day I'm putting it there. It doesn't take me any extra time necessarily to check it unless you have catches and you got to take the catch out and reset it, all that. It does cost me a little extra bait, but I buy 2-pound bags of baby carrots, and that's what I use for bait. And then I get free sugar beets here I cut up. So this past season, even though it was a short season, I think I went through about 4 pounds of baby carrots this season. And that caught me 82 muskrats. Well, not all of them were caught in muskrat sets, but you get the idea, So, yeah, I caught 20 muskrats per pound of baby carrots, if that makes sense. Let's see. Next thing, I'm working on a design right now. I'm going to make floats. I brought it up, probably even the last couple years. I have a design already figured out. I actually got 2 designs. I'm going to make 2 different designs of muskrat floats, dual-ended, so there'll be a trap on each end with kind of sides on it, so they try to keep them to come up onto the ends of it. We're going to have some floats. I'm hoping, I don't know if I'll quite get 2 dozen made. I'm hoping to get roughly a dozen of each style made. One style is going to have 1.5 coil springs on there. The other one's going to have like some old jump traps on there. I have some old Victors and a few, I don't even know what all brands they are. There's a few Herders ones I think in there. But yeah, I'm gonna make some for jump traps, so the whole float will be a little skinnier, because I'm basically necking them down to the width of my trap. I don't want to have my float that wide with my trap sitting in the middle of it. I want to kind of, so they have to go over my trap to get on. I'm gonna router in a little groove so my trap kind of sets down into the float just a little bit to keep it from muskrats like catching your trap and pulling it off when they're trying to get up on there. Once the trap's off, that muskrat's gonna hop off. I'm not worried about, you know, them getting hung up on the actual top of the float. So yeah, double-ended floats. Again, I have a prototype most of the way done. I'm just not to the point where I want to show you guys, and this isn't the video for that anyway, but we're gonna have some floats. There are plenty of spots where I feel like they'd probably work very well. They're not necessarily, I'm gonna bait them when I put them out, so they'll be probably I'd consider them a baited set. But I think you could probably put floats and just pile a little bit of weeds on top of it, and they're gonna probably come and hop on there. And I may actually play with that a little bit next season as well. I may actually try to do like 50-50, have bait on some of them, have bait on some and lure on some of them, and then have some that are just maybe pile little weeds on the middle of it, and then just see if they want to just set on it. And part of the reason, the next thing on my list is I made a floating colony trap. So essentially that much of it is below the water, then there's a board, and then I basically made a colony trap on the top where they would climb in, and then they get trapped in there, then they dive into the bottom and they drown in there. I had that out a couple years ago. I didn't put it out this year. It's kind of cumbersome. It's 3 foot long and 8 inches wide, you know, and I don't know, 18 inches high, I think it is. So it's kind of cumbersome to haul around. So I wanted to try and get my whole water line going, and then I would have put it out, but I got froze out this year, so I didn't end up getting it out anywhere. When I had that out, the muskrats would climb up on the end of it. They just weren't going into the darn thing, but they'd climb up on the end of it and they were pooping all over the damn thing. And yeah, I should have just put a foothold right there and caught the damn things, but that's essentially what the floats are going to be doing for me. So yeah, we're going to be making floats. I'm going to do a few minor modifications to that floating colony trap, because I do feel like a guy could probably catch some muskrats with that setup. Again, I don't know, they just didn't go into it, and I have some ideas on why. I also learned this year that muskrats apparently are attracted to fishy smells and beaver meat. I learned this trying to catch mink. I put out my portable pocket sets I had made, and I had a sliver of beaver meat roughly size of your thumb, probably that length and diameter, pushed into my pipe, and then a size of carp about that same size pushed into there. And the carp had been frozen and then unthawed, so it really had a fairly fishy smell to it, you know, almost fish oily smell already when I put it in there. But I think the one day, out of the dozen portable pockets I had out, I think I caught 8 muskrats in there. I think one ringed his leg off or got 8 or something, but I had like 8 out of the 12 had muskrats in them. I did not know that muskrats liked fish. After the fact, I've had some comments and stuff where people have told me they've seen them like chasing minnows and cricks and different things. I did not know that was the case, so that was something new for me. I don't know that that's going to necessarily help me catch them. I'm not going to purposely put fish oil on a set with the idea that it's going to catch muskrats. I may try it though, but we'll see. Yeah, just something I did not know. I didn't know. I'm assuming it's the fish smell that they're like, you know, that they're going after rather than the beaver meat, but I don't know that to be true either. Something I really noticed this year, I've paid more, or I don't know if either one of those are right. I noticed this year, and I've also noticed it other years, but not to the extent I did this year, that I need to find more of these culverts. Because as you can see, once it iced up, I can still run colony traps in the culverts, and I did very well in some of the places I had colony traps. You know, in the one bigger culvert, I had 3 colony traps to kind of get the whole thing blocked off, and I had 7 the one day. I think I caught like 15 total there in 5 checks, something like that. Out of the 80 I caught 15 in those 3 colony traps there. They seem to be deadly sets. They're easy to set. Just throw a colony trap in the darn thing and, you know, just pull the thing out. I can check check them just as easier than checking, you know, foothold sets and that type of stuff. So yeah, my kind of idea, there are a couple culverts I do know of already, but I didn't have any colony traps to put in them. I'm going to be building some more colony traps this summer as well. A few different sizes, I think, to kind of optimize for the culverts I already am setting. I don't feel like I'm maybe blocking the whole thing off as good as I'd like. So I might make some that are the same height, but just make them a little bit wider. So yeah, trying to find more culverts in the off season. Like if I'm out duck hunting or something like that, maybe stop by some of these through and figure out where the culverts actually are. I have a way that I'm gonna maybe try to mark them in the off season. You know, I don't want to like put a gray fence post and leave it there because that's very obvious. People are gonna wonder why there's a gray fence post standing in kind of a random spot. But I have a way that I think figured out of how I can mark some of these culverts in the off season. So when I come to trapping, I can either put sets right by the culvert, you know, like foothold and baited sets right there, or try to put a colony trap inside the culverts. So yeah, that's kind of my goal. And I think once I figure them out a little bit, you know, I should be able to find them year after year once I find them the first time. But yeah, I feel like that may be a spot where I'm maybe missing out on making some catches. Again, they're not a baited set. One of my next points on here is, it may not be the next one, but one of my points on muskrats here, I sort of noticed that I actually was catching larger muskrats on average in non-baited sets. There was one spot, like day after day, I had two 110s basically because the water was only that deep. You know, and I had them half in and half out of the water in one little creek coming out of a culvert there. I mean, and it was every day I had one catch. Almost every day it seemed like both my traps were set off. I had several times I had two catches there. I had a couple times where one trap was set off and I had one muskrat, and I had one time where both were set off with nothing in them. But that's such a simple set there. It's not baited. It's literally just a trail set. But again, I feel like my average size of those muskrats I was catching some, you know, XLs to 3XL muskrats out of those sets. And I had, I think, out of the 80 muskrats, I think I had like 7 that were 3XL this year. So, I mean, those are big muskrats. And I feel like I did better on trail sets. One more trail set that I could think of is I had a 160 blocking a culvert that was out of the water a ways, and I had put, it looked like either a skunk or a raccoon trail going through that culvert, so I put a 160 there, and I think 2 days in a row I had a jumbo muskrat caught in that 160. Never did catch a raccoon or a skunk there, but I caught them 2 giant muskrats there. So again, even if the culvert is out of the water, those still might be spots where the muskrats are going to use the culvert for protection to get from one side of the road to the other. And I do know of several culverts already that are like that, you know, where there's open water on each side. It's just the culvert's up high enough. If the sioux gets high enough, they'll run back and forth. But most of the time in the fall when I'm trapping, they're out of the water. So pay attention to those, try and find more of the culverts and try and set more of those culverts. And I feel like, in my mind, like I said, I did end up with a little bit bigger size on average muskrats from those type of sets. So I made a point to mention this. I don't know the exact averages. I could probably go back and figure out what it was. But when I had muskrat sets, except for the first catch, the first day when I had 111 out and I pulled 85 of them, I caught 15 muskrats that day. So like, what would it be, like 12 or 13% catch rate I had there, but I got iced in. So I actually don't think that was bad. But once I pulled, you know, all the ones that were iced in, I was actually like close to 40% average catch rate on sets. Basically, whenever I had them out through the first part of the season when I trapped, and then once I come back and put muskrat sets out, you know, I only had a few out around where I was trying to trap mink, but I was still averaging like almost 40% catch rate every day. That's a very good catch rate. And again, like the 10 days that I missed out on trapping, 40% catch rate, you know, a guy could have been probably fairly easily putting up 20, 25, 30 muskrats in a day like I did a few years ago when I caught 300. I was catching 30 plus a day for most of a week there. I feel like that would have easily been possible this year again. So kind of a, you know, what could have happened kind of thing. And it just, I don't know. It still kind of irks me, quite honestly. But next thing I had on here is related to the portable pockets for mink and it's still kind of in my muskrats lessons learned here, but making sure, and it applies for both. So the first one is making sure that I have my cable running not basically free and clear of any other cattails or anything like that. The portable pockets, part of the issue that I noticed is I basically have to have them up on the shore. So if there's any amount of cattails there, you know, I have to find like a divot where there's no cattails, and then so I have a runway for my animals to get, so I can stake it up against shore and have a runway for my animals to get out to the deeper water to drown without getting tangled in the cattails. And I had a few did get tangled in the cattails and stuff. So I'm gonna have to be a little more vigilant about that next season, of where I'm staking them down, making sure my cables are clear so the animals can't get caught in the cattails, because I had a couple muskrats wring their front legs off because they got tangled up and then, you know, twisted out before they got out deep enough to drown. I think a mink is a little more powerful animal, and I don't know if they can even wring their leg off like a muskrat. So I feel like they're going to keep fighting the cattails until they finally get out to the deeper water and drown. But if I have a muskrat caught, my trap is set off. I'm not going to catch anything else. I want that muskrat to be there when I get there to check the trap. So, and then portable pockets. I didn't have any lure on my portable pockets this year, purposefully. I did not put any lure on them, and I don't know if that helped my muskrat catch in my portable pockets, as opposed to putting like a mink land lure or something like that on my portable pockets may have shied the muskrats away. I did that on purpose. I kind of wanted like a proof of concept that, okay, is it just the bait that's catching them? Is it lure bringing it to them? So I purposely didn't use any lure on my portable pockets, with the idea that that would give me a little better idea of whether the pockets themselves are working. Next season, I'm probably going to try and add lure to a few of them and just kind of see how that goes. But I think that's everything I have on muskrat. All right, guys, the next species on the list is mink, and it kind of goes back to back with the portable pockets that I was just talking about. So a few more lessons on the portable pocket, more mink related than just general muskrat, or kind of both related. I was a little surprised how well the portable pockets actually worked. I mean, I only did catch one mink in a portable pocket. I caught the other mink kind of next to a mink box that I think that mink had set off, and then he got caught in a trail set right there at 110. But yeah, I was a little surprised by how well the portable pockets worked. I mean, catching muskrats, I did not expect that at all. Zero chance that I thought I was going to be catching muskrats in there. If I made a true pocket, then I feel like there would have been a better chance, but I did learn that as well. When I tried, I actually did play around a couple times, and I was going to try and put an actual pocket in, dig a hole up into the bank. Most of the areas that I'm trapping, it's all going to be on the edges of roads, because I'm trapping sloughs, not creeks. That's a very important distinction when it comes to mink trapping. I feel like there is a ton of information on trapping mink out of creeks, pockets, all that stuff. Way easier in creeks than in a slough setting. So I don't have creeks in my area. Some of these sloughs have basically like a culvert under the road where it runs into the next slough, and that's about it. There really ain't creeks like continually flowing. Other than like our pasture has one of the only creeks around. And I had planned on doing an actual pocket down there, and I never did. I put a portable pocket down there instead, and I didn't catch anything in it. But so sloughs rather than creeks makes a ton of difference when it comes to putting pockets in. So the only place where I have enough bank to put a pocket in, an actual pocket with a hole in the bank, is they're going to be in the road ditches. Most of the road ditches where the sloughs are, they've fortified them with rocks. They've went along and put rocks in there to try and keep the water from washing out the roads. I don't know. I think if I ever get one in, it's going to take me hours to find a spot where I can dig more than 4 inches deep, dig a pocket more than 4 inches deep before you're going to hit rocks. Because I had a hard time even with my portable pockets just finding a spot to pound, my rebar that's on my portable pocket, get a spot where I can actually pound that in so I can get it, a couple inches above the ground. So yeah, I was surprised how well they worked. I have plans over the summer here. I have a dozen of them. I made 12, and I'm going to probably make another dozen of them because I don't see, if I'm checking muskrat sets in a slough, I'm going to have a portable pocket there because why not? And I have minks eating my muskrats every year anyway, so maybe a guy can thin the mink out a little bit and it'll, one, stop them from eating the muskrats I have caught and stop them from killing other muskrats that I haven't caught yet. The next thing I learned on my portable pockets is I staked my drowning cable with the portable pocket. That was my design going in, but I don't feel like that's probably the best way to do this. I had a lot of trouble if, say, you guys are the deep water, I have my cable running towards you. I almost had to aim my portable pocket to the side. Otherwise, if I aimed it forward, that cable was going right over the top of where I wanted my trap to be. So I almost had to aim it to my side so my trap was over here with my drowning cable here. And sometimes that really wasn't the most ideal setup to have it aimed. I want to basically aim right towards the water. I don't want to have to aim it kind of sideways, parallel to the shore in order to get my trap in front of it. To solve that, what I think I'm going to do, one, I think I do need longer cables. I only made, 7-foot long cables. Some sloughs it was fine because they are deep enough off the road ditch to work well. There's a few of the other sloughs where even 7 feet out, I was only in a foot of water. I think it would have still drowned a mink and it drowned muskrats that way. But I think I should probably have them so I can maybe get out 8 to 10 feet out instead of just 7 feet. And then part of the way I have my portable pocket set up as being the stake, there was a couple of them and I didn't really like it, but I couldn't do anything different. My portable pocket was basically pounded into a cattail clod. There was cattails along the bank and I had, my thing just going through a clod of cattails basically, and that was holding the top end of my drowning cable. If a guy would have caught an otter, which is a chance around here, a beaver possibly, or a raccoon are kind of the three that I'm worried about. I don't know if that would have been enough to hold them with just my portable pocket staked into a cattail clod. If they went down the drowning wire, the plate was out there, but I caught one raccoon in my portable pockets and he ended up pulling out, but he had slid my plate into the shore and then, knocked a whole chunk of cattails down. If they do that and they're basically the only thing holding them there would have been the portable pocket stake there, because the plate, they could drag the plate around, and you get even a 30-pound beaver, he's going to be able to pull a railroad plate around. So I'm concerned about that. So to fix that, what my plan is, I'm actually going to probably build my drowning cables. I'm going to play around with having an adjustable top on them, but also make them I want them so I can get out 8 to 10 feet out in the water to get a little deeper water to drown, but also leave them 2 feet longer on the shore end and actually stake it with a T-bar stake up on the actual shore, and then the idea would be my cable would be running me to you. I could actually move my portable pocket anywhere I want it and put that in and have my trap on the cable next to it essentially. And I feel like I'll be able to make sets a little bit easier that way. There may be times where I still may use the portable pocket as the stake on the land side of it. But yeah, the idea is that I'm going to try and make maybe my cables in that 12-foot range and then maybe have an adjustable loop at the top end. I have a couple ideas on how I might do that, but I'm still kind of working the kinks out with that. So, if I only needed 8 feet long, I can adjust my 12-foot down to 8-foot length and then stake that end of it. And then, like I said, throw the plate out in the water, but have a separate staking the cable down other than the portable pocket. I feel like I can be a little more flexible and get the pocket and my trap set up a little bit better. than what I had this year. I mentioned it in the muskrat part of this, but I put a note in this one. Just I almost need a 2-foot wide swath from wherever my drowning cable is, that there's no cattails, you know, like standing cattails or weed clumps or anything else that, you know, because I have a short chain on the traps that I'm using. I'm using number 11s, you know, double spring number 1 size traps, double long spring. But that trap is that long, plus I got a chain on the end of it, so that animal can get from my cable, they could get maybe a foot this way and a foot that way, you know, and they can go round and round if they don't end up going down straight down the wire, the drowning cable. So I need to make sure I have a little better clear path that animal can get from wherever my trap is setting to the deep water without getting tangled up in anything. And if they are, I need to probably trim some of that stuff out of the way if I can't find a better spot to put it. I think that's about it for portable pockets. I'm new to the portable pocket world. I'm new to mink trapping in general. I am not a good mink trapper. I caught 2 sort of on purpose this year, which is almost a first for me. I've caught a couple in mink boxes over the years, but I have not had good luck catching mink, even though I think there are a fair amount of them around. I think mink and weasels are 2, and really probably otters in this area, are animals that I think there's actually more around than people realize are around, because you don't see them on a day-to-day basis. You know, you see raccoons on the side of the road when you're driving, or skunks. You see coyotes running out across the field someplace, but you don't see the mink and weasels running around too often. Once, I probably could count on 2 hands how many times I've seen a live mink like run across the road in front of me when I'm going duck hunting or something else. It hasn't happened all that many times, and I put on quite a lot of miles doing that stuff. So I think there's more animals around than people realize. I just don't think have it figured out quite yet of how to catch them. So, all right, general mink things: check your bait every day. Mink boxes especially, it seems like they steal my damn bait out of there. I have a good plan. I'm redesigning my mink boxes. I'm gonna back of your mink box, I have them all wire screens right now. That's what pretty much a lot of people say that's the way to do it. I've not had good luck with that, so I may switch some of them and be more of a solid board with just a few holes drilled in it so I still get airflow. I'm going to make the back of my box removable, because in roughly 4 inches I'm going to put a wire screen in there, so weasels, shrews, mice, whatever can't get in my mink box and steal my bait out of there. And then I can put my back of my box back on and hold it. You know, my bait will be in there, and hopefully that will keep so I actually have bait in my mink box. On the front end, I'm going to move my trap back. So my boxes right now are like 16 inches. I'm going to have my trap probably 6 or 7 inches back in my box. I'm going to leave some of them wide open on the front end, and some of them I'm actually going to make a door for that with a hole, I don't know, 3 inches in diameter. And the way I have my weasel boxes set up, I'm actually going to try and set my mink box up the same way if I put holes in the front. So the way I have my weasel box set up, I have the front of my box and I have my trap with the trap pan back like 1 inch. The idea is the weasel comes in, he's going to want to kind of look in, and then he's going to put his feet on that pan thinking he's got to do that to get into the box. As soon as he does that, pan down, weasel's caught. Half the time my weasel is sticking halfway out of the box or part way out of the box because they didn't even get in far enough, the trap catches them, they're hanging out. If I make mink boxes with a hole in there, I'm going to have my 120 in there with a wood pan on the trigger, basically, you know, within 2 inches maybe of that hole, with the idea that the mink ain't going to want to step in between the trap and the front of the box. They're going to try and almost jump to your pan as like the next spot to get into your box, and then hopefully whammo, my 120 will have them caught there. Those are all theories. That's what I'm going to try, and I have one mink box set up that way that I've played around over the winter here and have it set up. I think most of my boxes are going to be that way, with a hole in the front, a solid board in the back. I want them to be able to smell it, so I want a few holes drilled through so they get airflow in there. I want them to actually get in the box to see what's actually in there. And that's kind of the problem I have with a wire screen, is that they can see all the way through. They can see whatever you have setting in there for a chunk of bait. You know, when you're 16 inches away from it, it may just look like a glob sitting there. If I have it more dark inside my box, I feel like the mink are used to going into dark holes and everything to check stuff out. I don't think they're going to shy away from going in there, as long as I can drill enough holes to keep a little bit of airflow, so you know you're getting the smell of your bait and lure out of your box to get the mink to want to come check it out. Again, with mink boxes, I've not had a lot of success. I haven't heard of a lot of people having success with mink boxes, but I don't have a lot of choice on some of these thrus, because again, I don't have the bank in order to put pocket sets or do some of these other things. The nice thing about mink boxes as well is they will continue to work as long if the slough freezes over. I can, you know, I'll put them, usually I put them right kind of on the edge of the slough, try to cover them with grass if I can, or cattails, but they continue to work even though, you know, I have to pull the whole rest of my water line. My mink boxes are still there, and I'd like to figure out how to get so I can actually catch some mink after stuff freezes, because I'll see tracks in the snow and different things. The mink are there, I just got to figure out how to catch them. And I think by modifying my mink boxes a little bit, I'm hoping that will lead me to catching a few mink. I'd love to catch 10 in a season, 5 in a season, let's say. If I could catch 1 or 2 every year in a mink box, I'd be ecstatic about that. Because every mink I catch, I feel like, is like 20 muskrats that's going to make it to next season. That, you know, that mink is going to kill and eat 20 muskrats a year, if not more. I'm just throwing that out as a number. It probably is way more than that in some places, but I'd rather leave the 20 muskrats so I can catch the 20 muskrats by killing the mink. You know, this year we'll save 20 muskrats for next year. I mentioned this last year as well. I put my trap right next to sloughs or whatever. As soon as the slough freezes over, I need to make sure my box and the chain of my trap is not froze down. I had issues where I caught the second mink this year. I had moved that box closer to that culvert, but my chain was laying in the water, and that day everything was froze, and I think that was part of the reason why my trap was set off, but still partly in the box, is the chain was froze down. I don't know, that mink may have actually got pulled out of that trap. I have no proof of that. There was no hair on the trap or nothing that really proved to me he was in that trap. But I need to, again, make sure that if stuff finally does freeze up, that just make sure my chain and the trap and everything is all loose, the box isn't froze down, because you could spend a lot of time chopping a box out of the ice if it's froze down. And I'd rather do it right away as soon as stuff starts freezing up than wait till the end of the season and it's covered in snow and everything else and I'm trying to chop it out of the ice. So different baits and larger pieces of bait. Beaver meat and muskrat hindquarters is what I've been using for mink bait. And I used in my portable pockets, I had chunks of carp. I think I'm gonna try to, I have some carp left, some bigger, like, you know, full fillets of carp that I'd like to smoke, but I'm actually gonna keep them for mink bait unless I can get some more this spring, some more carp. But yeah, using a bigger chunk, so size of your fish chunk of beaver meat is what I kind of settled on. Using the hindquarters of a muskrat, so get a bigger chunk of meat. For a while, I was only using, like, you know, inch square pieces of stuff. Well, I don't think that's enough to get you a decent amount of smell coming out of there, and so on. The same thing's true for a weasel box. I used the same type of bait for my weasel boxes this year, and I think that helped, and I think that will help with, like, my mink boxes and that type of stuff, trying to get animals to go into your mink box. Get a bigger chunk of meat that's hopefully going to have some more smell to it to get them curious enough to go into your box. Yeah, and I guess the last thing I have is just a simple enough. I just need to, honestly, I think if I'm going to catch mink in any kind of numbers, I just need to get more mink sets out, period. So whether that's mink boxes, like I said, I got enough stuff. I think I'm going to make some more portable pockets. I'm hoping to even get close to 24 of them ready to go. You know, 24 portable pockets. If I can get, I have a bunch of mink boxes now, but if I redesign them, I'm going to probably, hopefully, maybe get a dozen mink boxes ready to go. So if I get 3 dozen sets out, I don't see any reason why a guy couldn't, catch 5 mink in a season on purpose, not in beaver sets, not in raccoon sets, but purposely catch mink. I think mink is a numbers game. You just got to get enough sets spread around to get into wherever that mink happens to be at that time. All right, that was the last thing on mink. The rest of them I don't have a lot of thoughts on. For coyotes, I mentioned this in my in one of the catch videos or whatever. I had a couple pullouts of a coyote set right away, and I think there was 2 raccoons first, and I think the third one, I don't have proof either way that it was a raccoon or a coyote, but I think it may have been a coyote in there. What I've learned from that is the first time there was a little rock hole in the jaw open, so catching a raccoon with offset jaws isn't a good deal. I use all closed jaw coyote traps for that particular purpose. If an animal steps in there, if my trap is set off, if you have offset jaws, yeah, the raccoon can pull out of there, but my trap is set off. I'm not going to catch anything else there anyway because the trap's set off. So if that raccoon sets it off, I have a very good raccoon here. I had the top lot raccoon at FHA several times, and this year I was the top lot of the Western raccoons at the FHA auction in March here. I don't know if it happened to be the top lot in the whole auction or not. I didn't look at all the prices, but with that in mind, I catch a very good raccoon here. They're big and they have good color, and they're good thickness for that they want. If a raccoon steps in there, I make just as much and probably more right now than I will if a coyote steps in there, because coyote prices are not good. If you get, right now in my area, if I get over $10 average for coyotes this year, I'm going to be very surprised by that, where I averaged over $20 on the 9 raccoons I had this season. I averaged over $20 on those raccoons. Okay? So I'm almost doubling my money if a raccoon steps in there. So offset jaws, I'll get off of my soapbox with that. I want a closed jaw trap, so if that raccoon or that skunk steps in there, I want them there waiting for me when I get there. With that in mind, so I had misses in that set. Not happy at all about that. It like eats me to the core that I had 1 miss, much less 3 in that one set. What I think I figured out, there's a very caveat to that my whole thinking here. I had kind of set my trap on the side. There was a pocket gopher mound, and I had my trap kind of built on the side, and I dug a hole into the pocket gopher mound for my dirt hole. My trap was not setting level. My trap was tipped like this. It's kind of on the side of the hill, the grown over, grassed over pocket gopher mound. I have no proof of any of this, but my thinking is that trap setting like that may have led to me getting less than ideal catches, which then led to me having pullouts. After I had the couple pullouts, I actually dug my trap bed a little different. I got my trap setting so it almost was like the hillside, then a little flat, and then kind of the hill again. I had dug my hole so my trap was setting a little more flat, and then I almost think the first time I pulled my line, I had a coyote caught in that set. And then when I come back and reset my line, I did not use that original set. I actually moved over a little bit and made another new set, but there I made sure my trap was setting like level. I don't want it setting like this, so when the animal's stepping on it, they're not stepping right flat on it. They're kind of stepping. I have no proof that that's what's caused the pullouts. Again, you get random stuff happens on your line. You don't always get the catch you want, and you do have pullouts. It's just a matter of life if you're trapping at all for any length of time. Anybody that tells you that never have a pullout is lying to you, flat out lying to you. I just want to try to minimize the opportunity for that to happen. And my thought is, looking at video of this after the fact and then in real time, my thinking is having my trap setting at that little, I mean, I'm exaggerating with my hand. It was not at a 45, but it was at probably 15, 20 degree angle. It wasn't setting flat. And I'm not sure if that led to pullouts. And then with that is I hug my dirt holes with my trap. So if I have my dirt hole, my trap is basically, my hand is the trap. It's basically dirt hole, trap is right here. So the edge of my trap is almost in my dirt hole. I'm that close when I'm setting my coyote sets. Because I want to be catching I don't want to be catching on targets, but if they're there, I want to catch them. So skunks, raccoons, fox, badgers, and coyotes, I still am catching them. I'm hugging that dirt hole. At the most, I have maybe 2 inches from the edge of my dirt hole to the jaw of my trap is the most I ever would have. With that, having my trap setting at an angle, I feel like an animal could kind of reach in and they may not have been getting over my trap as good as they could have been there. Yeah, I'd kind of like to hear you guys' thoughts on that. If you have any thoughts on that, drop them down in the comments. You all can kind of learn from each other on things like that. Again, I don't have a good reasoning for anything why that happened, but it did happen. I'm not happy about it. I'm going to, try to figure out what happened so I can stop it from happening again. Last thing I have this year, I was reading a Fur Fish and Game article, and in there, the guy mentioned using paper towels for pan covers. And what he was doing was using the paper towels that, when you rip them off, it's only a half a sheet or whatever, which almost all the paper towels are designed that way now. But he had just cut his roll in half, so instead of a full roll, he had half a roll, and then the sheets are only that wide. Pan cover, bam. I thought, what, I normally use a muffin wrapper. I'll crimple them up so they don't make noise, roll them around in my hand and then kind of straighten them out. Then they're not, crinkly like a, brand new one would be. And that's what I was normally used for pan covers. This year I went like 50-50. And what I had figured out, if I was doing 2 sets, the north set or the west set had a paper towel on there. That way I could always remember, this is the north set, that should have a paper towel back on there. Because sometimes the animals chew them up or whatever, and you can't find your pan cover when you go to remake the set. I use a brand new pan cover every time. I just pick up that trash. I don't leave my pan cover. If they're just shredded up, I try to pick up as much of it as I can. So I read that article. Sounded like an interesting thing to me. I actually found their Brawny brand. They're actually split both ways. So it's a normal size roll that has sheets this long, but it's actually perforated down the middle. So I didn't have to cut the roll or do anything like that. I just had to I pulled off like 5 sheets, ripped them in half, and then I ripped them off, and I just stacked the, pieces that big on top of each other, stuck them in a quart Ziploc bag, and that's what I used out on my line to keep them clean until I'd open the bag, take one out, zip the bag back shut, and then I make my set. Even all my pan covers, I always store them in a Ziploc bag. Hopefully try to keep a little bit of the smell of the rest of my coyote bag off of them and keep them clean. So that's what I do with that. The only thing I don't know is I had a few dug up traps this year. I think some of that was because I reused some traps I had out early in the season. I'm wondering possibly if they were digging up because of my peat moss, because I had some held over peat moss from last year I was using. I almost think that may have led to a few more dug up traps, but I don't know. Some of the ones that were getting dug up were the ones that had the paper towels in there. So I don't know if that caused it. I don't have a big enough sample size to know. So I'm gonna keep running this test for probably another 2 years. So like next season I'll be running 50% muffin wrappers, and I'm going to try 50% paper towels, unless I can tell 100% that all of a sudden now I'm keep getting dug up traps and they're always the ones with paper towels. Then I might switch away from them. But I would love to just lean towards switching to just that. The nice thing, they kind of lay in there nice. Even if they get wet, they still kind of seem to hold their shape. And they definitely I made catches with traps that had them in there. So they obviously kept the dirt from getting underneath my pan. We're just about done here. Fox and badgers. I don't really have any lessons learned. I only caught 2 of each one this year. The only lesson I may have is on fox. A few years ago I caught 16 fox. Should I have been letting some of them go? Did I hurt the population? I don't know. That's the only lesson I have on all that. Beavers. So this year I only really had the one spot that I had planned on trapping for beavers. I ended up catching a littler one first, which I didn't even think we were going to be in there. And then I remade it, and then I caught a bigger one, you know, and then I pulled my beaver sets. But I had some muskrat pulls in that set. And I think pretty much every day until I caught the two beaver out of there, my bait was gone on my muskrat pole. We talked already about muskrat poles and where I should have my bait above my trap. I do think I have caught beavers on my muskrat pole several times. I think 2 years ago I did it. I caught one, and I think I've 4 or 5 beavers over all the years I've been using the muskrat pole like that. I don't know if the beaver just gets up there and sets it off right away, or if he knocks the trap off first and then, you know, inadvertently steps on it and it catches him. So when I am trapping muskrats and sioux with beaver in there, I make sure that I get them pushed into the ground good. Like, I don't want them in 4 inches, I want them in a foot in good heavy sandy ground or down into the clay hard bottom as much as I can get them, because if you catch a beaver, I want that beaver still there and not stealing my pole. And I've never lost one of my poles to a beaver yet. But with that in mind, kind of a thing that popped in my head is, should I be putting like a Bridger number 5 right by my muskrat pole set on the bottom? You know, if I'm in this much water, put my muskrat set there, but put a Bridger number 5, you know, if my pole's here, maybe back 6 inches out from it, so if they get up on their hind feet, you know, kind of walk up to it, and then have that on a drowning wire to get them out away from my pole set. Something I may try in the future here. I don't have a lot of Bridger number 5s. That's my preferred beaver foothold. I don't have a lot of them, but I might give that a shot in the future. Skunks. I think skunk numbers were down this year. I caught 8 out of like the 13 I caught out of 1 yard. 7 in the yard and 1 in a coyote set behind the yard. So I hopefully cleaned out that whole family so there's not 8 more damn skunks in there next year. Because I typically catch raccoons in that yard, and I did not catch any raccoons in that yard this year. Last season, I caught the 32.6 pounder out of that yard, the biggest one I've ever caught. I caught out of that yard, and this year there was skunks in there. The only lesson learned or observation I made is the first 3 skunks I caught that weren't in that yard were all caught in pipe dream sets. And I only had 5 pipe dream sets out total, and I caught 1 skunk in 3 different pipe dream sets. And I think every skunk I caught that wasn't in that yard, every skunk I caught in a coyote set for sure, I caught in a pipe dream set, even though there was 2 different types of sets there. A pipe dream set and the dirt hole set, you know, is kind of how I had them set up, because I'm kind of still running a test on that as well on my line. But I caught them in the pipe dream sets. It's not maybe a big enough sample size to really know that that's a trend necessarily, but it's just interesting to me why they were in the pipe dream sets as opposed to, you know, this one caught in a pipe or a dirt hole set, that one in a pipe dream set, the next one back in a, you know, in a dirt hole. Just seemed very odd that they all ended up in the pipe dream sets. So weasels, I want to go after weasels a little harder. I think there's more of them around than a lot of people think. I'm going to build, I think, 4 more weasel boxes this summer again. And we're going to try and spread out my traps for weasel boxes, because I feel like I'm catching some of the ones I caught. Like I caught one in the mink box this year. That was in a spot I would have never thought the weasel would have been there. But in my mind, I think about those things. It's like, well, he was there. I have other spots that are a similar setup to that. Are there weasels in those spots that I'm not, you know, taking advantage of? So we're going to try and build, I think I have 8. We're going to build me 4 more, I think, to get me a dozen of them. And we're going to try and, you know, continue to catch some weasels. They're fun to trap. They're easy to set. You know, you don't maybe make the most money off of them, but shit, I made more off of a couple of the I had 2 bigger weasels this last season and 2 shorter ones. I made more off of the 2 bigger ones than I made off of a couple coyotes I caught. I got $6 a piece for the 2 bigger ones. I had a few coyotes that sold for $5 or less. So I'll take a weasel over a coyote any day if they're the same amount of money or worth the same amount. So and they're just fun to catch. I don't like catching the same thing over and over again. I don't want to say I don't want to catch 1,000 raccoons and not catch anything else, but I would kind of get bored of it after a while. I kind of like the variety of catching a coyote today. Tomorrow it might be a raccoon and a beaver or some muskrats or a mink. You know, I kind of like having a little variety. It kind of keeps me interested, keeps me going, keeps me trying to like figure out, okay, how do I, you know, do things a little differently to keep a little more balanced, you know, catches. So yeah, catching some weasels. Are they hurting anything? Probably not. They're just fun to catch. Raccoons. Dog proofs and rats finding them. In that yard where I caught all the skunks, the rats finally found my dog proofs, and once they find them, they would just clean you out. I use a golf ball on my dog proofs, and it doesn't matter. They just keep emptying your dog. They'll knock the ball off and keep emptying them out. I'll even catch a rat or two in my dog proofs every year, and I caught several this year. I think I videoed even a couple of them. A lot of times I don't video them. This year I did, just so you guys could see. It's annoying as hell, but once they find them, you could just as well pull your set. You can try and move it 10 feet, and you might get a day or two out of it, but then they'll just start cleaning you out over there too. So I've let a couple landowners know that they have rats there. Neither one seems to care because they're in abandoned yards or whatever. You know, it's a cost for them if they try to put poison out or whatever to get rid of them. They're just annoying for me, is what it amounts to. I did learn, be careful what you tie your dog proofs off to. I filmed it. I have the clip in an upcoming video as well. The raccoon, I had caught a raccoon, or what I'm assuming was raccoon, I guess. But I had tied my dog proof off to a tree, the same tree I had tied to several years in a row now. And I guess the tree, I don't know if the raccoons from having them caught chew on the trees and whatever, you know, they kind of tear up the area. But the tree would happen to be dead this year, and I did not notice it when I tied my trap off to it. The tree was about 1.25 inches in diameter. That's typically all I need to hold the raccoon in place. I actually like tying off to trees rather than pounding my stakes in, because then when I go to pull my line, I just undo my quick link, open it up, unwrap it off the tree, and away I go. I don't have to worry about either trying to pull the stake or cutting the stake, that type of stuff. So my lesson learned is make sure, one, your tree's alive, make sure it's probably at least 1.25 inches in diameter or bigger. And yeah, just kind of try to be a little more vigilant of what I'm tying my dog proofs off to, because I was just sick about that whole situation. Even after I finally found my trap and then I turned you guys on and filmed or whatever. Well, I walked around in the woods there for a while before I happened to just kind of accidentally found my trap in that road ditch there. I was just sick about it, because the fact if an animal pulls your stake or anything like that, the fact that they have that on their leg is not good at all. So I'm thrilled that he pulled out, to be quite honest with you, in that case. So it's on me as a trapper to make sure that does not happen again, and it will not happen again. I mean, my stake will be pounded hard into the ground in that location every year from now on. But again, I will be 100% more vigilant as to what I'm tying off to, if I tie off to anything at all. So yeah, missing and losing raccoons is one of the last thing on the whole list here is missing and losing raccoons. So I only ended up catching 9 raccoons, which is way down from normal. Normally I'm in the low to mid 20s. A couple years, I've gotten into the mid 30s even of raccoons in a season. I had 9 this year. But with that, I had 3 I figured pulled out of coyote sets. I lost 1 in a mink set and 1 in my pocket set. And I had the 1 that pulled out of that dog proof. So that's 5 raccoons right there that I lost this season. So a third of the raccoons I actually caught in a trap pulled out of my traps this season. That just irritates me to no end. And I'm just pointing that out. It's just a lesson learned. It's like, man, I need to do whatever I can to make sure that does not happen. Again, I averaged over $20 a piece on raccoons this year. That's $100 out of my pocket right there. That's a week of gas money essentially when I'm running my line. A couple of tanks worth of gas I lost right there. So yeah, I think it's on all of us to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. I have, again, each one instance I sort of kind of have some ideas of what happened, why that happened. Catching one in a mink set and having them pull out, I think that's fairly common, to be quite honest, because I'm only using a number 11 trap. So I know some guys use them and are successful holding raccoons with them, but I was not set to catch raccoons, so my I didn't have the best catch because I only had a couple of toenails in there. One more lesson on the pocket sets. I just thought of this as well. I didn't have it on my list. I did figure out if I have my pocket setting there, I was putting my trap basically right at the end of my pocket. But after I caught that first mink, I realized I probably should have my trap back 4, maybe even 6 inches back. Because from the front feet on a mink to his nose is 6 inches probably. So that's one thing that I'm going to try and pay a little more attention next year. And also, by not using my portable pocket as the stake for my drowning cable, I feel like I can make that happen a little bit better as well. But I'm kind of wondering if I didn't have, I'm not even wondering, I'm pretty sure I had my traps too close to the end of my portable pocket, and I should have had them back a little bit, so the mink would have to, if he's standing there just normal, not even stretched out, if he's just standing there, he can, smell the end of my pipe, but hopefully he's standing on my trap, and boom, I got him caught. So yeah, that's one more thing that I noticed when I was editing, and kind of noticed right at the end when I was pulling my line of pulling the portable pockets, is I should have had my traps back a little farther. But I didn't mean to kind of go off on a tangent there. I apologize for that, but it just popped in my head. All right, I think that's all the lessons learned. That's all the lessons learned I got. Not even that I think. That's all I have that I know of. Again, I appreciate you guys riding around with me this fall, or last fall, sticking with me, watching my videos, commenting. Again, I like to hear, especially like on this video or the part 1 of this, drop any comments, any thoughts, ideas, suggestions, anything like that you have in there. I want to know them. I think other people could benefit from that experience. That, if your experience is different than what I'm experiencing, drop it down there. I'd like to hear what you're seeing on your line that maybe could help me on my line and help other people on their line as well. Because again, the reason why I do this lessons learned video is a little bit for me, but I already know these things because I make a list and I notice them while I'm on my line. I'm making these videos to purvey or tell you guys what I noticed. So because you may be having the same things happening on your line, you just may not have noticed it or have thought about it. If anything, I overthink things, so I'll think about it, and if I think about it, I'll let you guys know, so maybe it'll get it on your mind of things you could do different on your line to help, hopefully, all of us catch more animals, not lose animals when you do get them caught, that type of stuff. So yeah, if you have suggestions, anything like that, please leave your comments down below. Any comments at all down below. Otherwise, that's all I got for you guys. Again, just thanks for riding around with me this last fall. Stay tuned over the summer here. There's going to be a series of how-to videos. There's going to be a lot of building type videos in there. There's going to be muskrat full video in there. I'm going to build some colony traps. I'm hoping to film that for you guys. Yeah, a few other things I'm going to try and build to help me on my line. Some trap related stuff, some fur put up related stuff. Yeah, so stay tuned over the summer for those types of things. If you have suggestions for stuff you want to know what I'm doing on my line, again, leave those down in the comments. I'll try to answer it in the comment section. If you want to know anything specific about what I'm doing on my line, I'm more than happy to tell you, to be quite honest. I'm not trying to hold anything back or hide anything. Otherwise, yeah, I just appreciate you guys watching Schmattz Outdoors. We'll see you guys on the next one.